Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Today's guest, Buck Showalter, knows a thing or two about leading teams. He's a three-time American League Manager of the Year and earned a reputation as a team builder who quickly built contenders. In his 20 seasons in the big leagues, Buck managed the New York Yankees, Arizona Diamondbacks, Texas Rangers, and Baltimore Orioles. His 1,551 career wins ranks 24th all-time in MLB history. Buck currently serves as an analyst for the Yes Network and MLB Network, and previously, Buck worked for ESPN. In our conversation today, we dig into how to build and position your team for success. Buck shares the defining moments in his career, how to maximize the talent and potential of each team member, and the power of little details. This is a great episode for anyone in a leadership role, as we really dig into team building and culture. Here we go. This is my conversation with Buck Showalter. So, Buck, I want to start with a little bit of personal background. I know your dad was just an absolutely huge influence on you and an incredible man, right? Teacher, coach, principal, I think, in the Deep South, right? During the era of school integration. You know, how did he shape you, Buck, and influence you?
So many ways you look back on, and my mom too. Believe me, they were a unit.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important things was he showed me how important being a good father and a good husband was. And also, you know, my mother and dad disagreed, but they just seemed to always put it, to bed, so to speak, every night. I thought that was a great, because I tell players all the time, those are the two biggest impacts you're going to have in your life. And don't think baseball is, it's about being a good father and being a good husband. That's going to be very challenging. I think the example he set racially, in a time when it wasn't popular, he walked out with the teachers union, which principals weren't supposed to do, and was told he would never work again. You think it's tough, Molly, you should try going to school where your dad's a principal. It's not,
I can't even imagine.
not a whole lot of fun. But you know what he did? He taught me to. Think back about all of it. My dad, every spare second, you would look in the back of a classroom, you'd hear a door open. He would sit in the back of the classroom, and he would listen to the teachers teach. They were auditioning every day. And one of the reasons he retired was he couldn't pick his teachers anymore. Tenure, he had some opinions on tenure and all this. And then he would talk to the teachers about teaching and methods and what you did today. Instead of sitting in your office talking on the phone, he would go to each classroom, and you'd see him once a week show up in the back of your classroom. So, helping the coaches coach, the teachers teach, and get the message out there. But I think loving my mother and being the father he was offset everything. And those are things that I keep in mind. And the other thing was his respect for authority, Molly. Later on, I found out that he didn't particularly care for a few of my coaches, but he never said anything negative about them around me.
Oh, interesting.
Because they were an authority figure, and he wanted me to understand that there was didn't mean you never question them, but privately you had respect for them. And don't get me going on how we've lost some of that.
How did this show up for you as a manager? The things that you learned from your dad?
My dad was like the proverbial duck. He was calm on the exterior and paddling like hell underneath. He would take everything in, and when it was time to make a decision, he would make it. And I look back, there was an old ballpark that we played in high school, skin infield. It had a big pecan tree in right center field. That's where we played our games. And we'd go up there and drag the field and pack the mound and pack the batter's box. And I hit a ball that hit in the tree that would have been a home run. And he said, we won't have that problem next year. And we went in the off season to cut down the pecan tree, burn out underneath the stump. But I found out, I just thought about it later. He just wanted to spend time with me on the weekend. I didn't want to hear anybody talk about the mound not being good or the dirt having too many rocks in it, because we were up there at 8:00 getting the field ready. Right. He was tough now. There were times when I didn't particularly like him. I jumped up in the end zone one time after scoring a touchdown. He would sit in the library and watch it. I don't know what possessed me. I was a sophomore. One jump, Molly, in the air with a ball over my head. I must have seen it on TV that week. And he's waiting on me on the front porch when I get home. He said, son, you need to act like you scored a touchdown again. And by the grace of God, you will again have some respect for your opponent. Yes, sir. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard you say, right? Like he was your dad. He wasn't your friend.
It doesn't always coincide. He said, I'd love to tell you yes all the time. But, yeah, I just thank God, Molly. I had a father that had the guts to be a father, but had a big heart too. My mother, but they were a team. You know, I feel sometimes when I look at bios on players, I'm a big bio. I can look at a bio and a background, and I tell scouts all the time, when you get to a ballpark, find out where they are in the parking lot, check out what he drove there, and then go find his mom and dad, brother and sister, and sit right behind them. And you'll get more about that player sitting there than you will watching him run to first base.
Yeah, you aren't kidding. You aren't kidding. Hey, Buck, when did you realize you wanted to get into coaching and managing, right? Like, when did you lean into that?
You know, I played, I think, 7 or 8 years professionally, and I had a chance to go back and play in AAA with the Yankees. I was a free agent. I could have gone and played AAA and tried to do it with some other club, or I could start coaching. They gave me those 3 options. They'd bring, they liked me around because Mr. Steinmeier, they wanted to win every level. Rookie ball, A ball, double A, triple A. And if you were considered a winning player, somebody that managers wanted around, but I was a proverbial 4A player. So I had to make a decision. I just got married. I could take it and run with it, or I had gotten my degree in the off season. I'd signed after my junior year, and I talked to my wife. I decided to go for it. And I started out as a hitting coach in Fort Lauderdale. Never said, hey, I want to manage the big leagues. I'm going to take whatever job they give me. I'm going to grind the hell out of it and see where it leads. I'm not going to covet somebody else's job or a job above me. I'm going to do this job so good that they may think that I might could do something else. And, one thing led to another. Next, I'm in a phone booth in Pirate City in the instructional league. Farm director said, I'm calling you at 8 o'clock, be there, which is about my bedtime because we were up at 5. And I picked up the phone. I'll never forget those bugs all over I told everybody, hey, I need the phone at 8 o'clock because everybody used to make calls home. Pick up the phone, Bobby Hop, and say, we think you could manage and think about Only Island, New York Penn League. You run extended spring, go there, and then go run instructional league. What do you think? I mean, it was a 10-second conversation.
Right, sure. Yes, sir, I'm in.
He says, no, this is a yes or no question. Do you think you can do it? Yes, sir. Okay, good. Bye. See you.
Right, exactly. You know what's amazing about what you just shared? I had Dabo Sweeney on the podcast, and Dabo said, look, man, every job I had, I just tried to be the best I could be at. And he sort of talks about bloom where you're planted, right? Just over-deliver in the moment.
That's great. I'm going to write that down.
So much of management, like whether it's baseball, whether it's the business world, it's about getting the best out of your people, right? It's about unlocking the best version of them. And for you as a manager, right, it's getting the best out of your guys. What was your approach to that in the clubhouse and even on the field?
We as managers and coaches, you got to look at, you're a ship passing in the night, okay? You really are. So it's really about them, and it's about surrounding them with the right peer pressure. I ask people in the jobs that I've taken, okay, who do you want to be? Who have you been? Who do you want to be? Every job's different. You adjust some to the players, whether it's Baltimore, Texas, or Arizona, or the Yankees. So I think being able to, Parcells said a long time ago, you want me to cook supper or dinner, or whatever it is, but I can't pick the groceries. There's a certain culture, I think, getting people around them. And you can take some guys on the fence. I've gotten my share of people. I had somebody say, wow, you took that guy? He goes, that's our job. That's the coach's job. That's his teammates' job. I said, is this guy we're talking about acquiring, is he going to make his teammates better? And does he care what his teammates think? It's important. You get somebody that lives on an island, and if you want that feeling, and you've been in a lot of locker rooms,
sure,
Molly, that when you got it going on, you walk through a locker room and you can feel it. It's tangible. You can win a game and you walk in, you go, something's not right here. You can lose a game, but you still got that. It's almost like it's a fluke that you lost, and you can't wait till the sun comes up to get back to that other feeling. So, trying to explain that to some people that haven't walked the walk, there's a feeling you get when you surround yourself with people that share that. It doesn't mean you have to love each other and like each other. It's just there's a respect for what we're all trying to do as a group. And that's where the talent of a leader comes into play.
Well, and it's what you talked about. I mean, you spent time with them. You listened. You asked questions. And it sounds like you really, really listened, took all that in. And then, of course, you led using all that. what would you say your leadership sort of philosophy is, right? What would you say maybe differentiates you, right, from other big league managers?
I don't know, Molly. That's a humbler. That's tooting your own horn. I don't know. I adjust a lot of the players. When I first started out in Oneonta, I learned more from managers and coaches that I had about what not to do than I learned what to do. People say, "Wow, who's your mentor?" Not to knock anybody. Everybody had good and bad points, me included. I remember how it made me feel when guys made me feel like they knew who I was and what I was. So, Oneonta guys would come in out of the draft, and we'd have like a 7 to 8 day workout period before the game start. You draft. This was first year players, and I made sure I had some notes on each player, walking through the line and stretching, and going, "Hey, how the Tigers going to do this year at LSU? You went to high school such and such. Know that high school's nickname. Know their school colors. Know the head coach's name, maybe." And walking through lines like that and going, "Hey, Joe, how you doing? How's the black and gold working today?" It is something that lets them think that you look at them more than number 94. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And it means a lot to people. And I can spend a lot of time on a bio, and I got a pretty good idea what I'm getting to some extent. But I don't know, philosophies, I learn something every day. There's not people would get there early for our meetings in the morning because there's a way that you stir the pot and then you back off and you let your people talk. We had 8 o'clock get started every morning, and at 8 o'clock I locked the back door. And you hear some people pounding or maybe 30 seconds late, but after a day or two, they all understand that our time was more valuable than your time, the group's time. Being on time, it's not trying to show how tough you are. But I could talk about it, situations that you run into. It's like your father said, there's going to come some times where you're going to know, I'm not going to tell you, but you're going to have to plant your feet and make a stand. It's not going to be comfortable. When somebody comes after your coaches and wants them fired because somebody's not producing, there's moments, I had to leave the Yankees over 4 coaches wanting to be fired. And that was really uncomfortable. I'd spent 19 years there. I didn't want to go anywhere.
I know. I wanted to ask you about that. Tell me a little bit about that.
We had the first playoff team in 95 after the strike in 94, and we had the best record in the league. But we lost, and it was Mr. Steinbrenner in the playoffs, even though we hadn't been in the playoffs in forever. And his way of tweaking us, me, and showing his – and he wanted to fire 4 coaches, and I just said, well, I couldn't do that. That's part of why we were here, and I couldn't go in the locker room and preach all these things to the players about we and give coaches up at the first time there's, a little hot water. And I knew he was going to replace them with people that I probably didn't want around me. And it's tough. My contract ran out. He tried to come back, but I'd already committed to Arizona. But that was one of those times when you just had to do what was right. I didn't have any jobs out there. It was tough. Believe me, my wife thought I was nuts.
You're a preparation guy, right? Your teams are known for preparation. How did you set expectations for your guys so that they took on that same mindset, right? And sort of drank that Kool-Aid with you?
Yeah, once again, you got to surround yourself with certain type of people, but that also receptive to that. Spring training, I tell guys, it's a dress rehearsal for a Broadway play. It really is. You're rehearsing things that may happen. You want to be ready for them. There's a rundown. There's a relay from right field with a man on first and 1 out. There's a pickoff play. There's a first and third play. I could go on and on. There's a pop fly priorities and calls. These things are going to happen. We don't know when they're going to happen. Some prop's going to fall on stage. You're rehearsing for a Broadway play. You're rehearsing your lines. And, if we go on stage and we're not good, we're going to get bad reviews. And we're not going to be around very long. So we're rehearsing. And the great feeling, and what I do miss, Molly, is when you rehearse for something, all of a sudden it pops up on the field and you're ready for it. Man, I got to go up the runway. I'm so proud. I mean, it's like, wow. And then those little looks, they come in after the inning, they look at you, go, yep, that's what we talked about. There it is.
That's cool.
But that's kind of, you miss those team things that players that get it. And believe me, they'll embrace everything that you embrace. So you better be careful. Each spring was different. We had points of emphasis every spring that we wanted to be real good at because we knew what was headed our way.
So did you rehearse the bases loaded walking Barry Bonds?
You know what's funny about that? You've done your homework. Barry was okay to me, but after that moment, man, we'd go be taking batting practice against the Giants anywhere, everything. He'd walk all the way across the field and sit there and talk to me. He thought that was pretty cool. You know what's funny? As that inning started, I saw it coming. I know you're going to think I'm crazy. Yeah, right. I'm going to, because you count. He's one of those guys that you count how many times you can keep him from hitting. Because there's maybe five guys that when they're right, there's no set way to pitch them. Okay. You pick your poison. But I could see how the whole inning was evolving. And luckily, he didn't start that game. He came in as a pinch hitter in the seventh, I think, and was coming around to hit again. There's a bunch of variables there I won't get into, but no, I could see it coming. And you know what's funny is my coaches saw it coming too. And I know they're all thinking, let's see what he's going to do with this one.
I mean, preparation is key. Detail's key. I know you have tremendous attention to detail. I mean, I actually heard, you know, how many steps there are from the dugout to the clubhouse, right? How the grounds crew, you know, trims the field for you. Tell me a little bit about how that shows up for you and why you lean into that so much.
Not having played in the big leagues and not having that part on my resume, I knew I had to have something that other people, and I've always been that type of guy. I don't know. I just notice things. Sometimes it's a curse. I can't, to this day, I'm walking in an airport and, I'll see somebody with different things. I tell scouts, if you go into a ballpark, give me 7 things you see and you got rained out that helps you evaluate the player. And they go, what? I never saw him play. What about his parents? How do they look? How tall are they? Does he have a full beard or is he a baby face? Does he have a high butt, low butt? Does he have thick legs or long legs? Does he have from elbow to rib? I mean, there's so many things that the details of things, but you can make people paranoid if you get too big on it. So you got to be careful about, there's some things you just need to wear inside and go, okay, that's something. And there's exceptions. You may have some prejudged thing about players, but all of a sudden you go, this is different. This is different from the norm I've seen over the years. You got to be open to that because they come in all shapes and sizes. And I like getting things about people that other people don't get. Paul O'Neill years ago, when he came over in a trade for us with the Yankees, the spontaneity of a moment, you can see sincerity. Paul was kind of a brooding guy at that time, and he was trying to make his way in New York, which he did quite well. But I knew down deep he really wanted to win, and you had to jump out of the dugout if you were all the way down the corner to see if a ball was fair or foul in old Yankee Stadium. And when a guy didn't get up when his teammate hit a ball down there, it told me he didn't really care.
For sure.
But Paul, every time, would jump out of the dugout to see if his teammate's ball was going to be fair or foul. And I walked by him one day. I said, Paul, I got you. You're out of the bag. Got you. He goes, what? I said, you care. I said, don't be afraid to let people know that you care. It's cool. It's got to be cool to care. And that's part of your job as a manager, to make it be cool to care.
As a big league manager, you've had to have a lot of difficult conversations, right? I mean, you've had to release guys, send guys down, tell
not
guys.
Fun.
Yeah, not fun. How do you approach them? How do you approach tough conversations?
Like a human being, like I would want to be treated. It's tough. And I got to tell you, Molly, there's been times when I wasn't 100% sure. But, believe me, nowadays, the manager, sometimes they don't even have to tell them. I mean, the way they do it now, every one of them, when our general manager said we're bringing 60 guys to camp, I looked at it like, okay, that's 35 people I got to have that conversation with.
Right.
That's the first thing I thought about. That conversation. And believe me, that's why I love spring training the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then the cuts start coming, and that's no fun because I've been there and I've been in those guys' shoes. And at the end, I always go, listen, and I always have somebody with me. If it's an infielder sitting down, the infield coach will be with me. If it's an outfielder, I bring the hitting coach or the pitching coach, and I go, listen, we can be wrong, and we could be wrong about this, and but you get a chance to prove us wrong because you can't hide down. Sooner or later, you're going to bubble to the top. I said, I've been there. Nobody wants to hear about my stories about how it happened to me. Nobody wants to hear that. Just tell me how I get back, what you thought, and then say, hey, listen, you're going to have some things come to mind when you leave here today. And I'm here. I get here about 5:30 and I leave at dark, and I'll stop anything and everything I'm doing. You come back and go, geez, I wish I'd asked him that. I wish we'd have talked about that. What did you mean by that? Because, you're in a little bit of a shock now. Your dream's been broken, but you come back and they'll come back. They'll think about things, and you need to have, because that's who we were. That's who we wanted to be. We wanted to have that relationship and say, listen, we're not perfect, but here's why we made this decision. You don't have to agree with it. I don't expect you to, but I'm going to be open. I'm going to tell you, You can come sit in our meetings because we're not going to say anything in there that we wouldn't say in front of you. And I told the guys in the meetings we'd have today, listen, I don't want you to say anything in here that you wouldn't say to the player's face.
The baseball season, right, it's a grind. And what we're hearing from a lot of our clients in the business world is they're working harder and longer than ever before in light of COVID. What are some of the things that you did to keep your guys fresh, right, inside of that grind?
That was a constant challenge, Molly. That's a great question because in 162, 7 days a week, I kind of chuckle at a football coach says, we just didn't seem really ready to play this week. John Harbaugh and I became good friends in Baltimore, and we used to go back and forth. I said, try playing 7 days a week for 7 or 8 months, starting in February, hopefully to October. But that's one of the great things about baseball. It's a separator. The grinders have advantages, and the people that can bring it every day. But you also can't be over relentless. There's just so much candle that you can burn. You've got to show those people that you've got. Hey, tomorrow, guys, we're not wearing ties on the plane. Hey, we're gonna show and go tomorrow. No BT, nothing. We played a late inning Friday night game. We got a day game tomorrow at 1:00. You just got to pick your spots where you just completely back off. You just let them have that space to breathe. It's their locker room. Nowadays it's an interview room almost. But I'm very protective of the places that allow them to be a team, and they can drop their guard, so to speak. Whether it's mode of travel, whether it's the locker room. That's why spring training is so precious, because you really get to be a team down there. You really get to see the essence of your love for the game, so to speak. But sometimes you got to back off. You got to this relentless 24 hours a day.
Yeah, sure.
Especially in today's world, it doesn't work. Included for you too.
Sure.
As a leader, and you can't be this hard ass all the time. Every once in a while, you got to let them know that, yeah, you're a human being. You've got some feelings, things, but you've got to be consistent. Deion Sanders, I saw yesterday. Deion played for me. I love him. He told the guys, he said, hey, before you go out every day, if you were a pilot, would you get on the plane with you? He says, the way some of you guys look, if I got on the plane, I saw you, he said, I'd get off the plane.
Yeah.
So your presentation means a lot to me.
Buck, that reminds me, Doc Rivers was a client forever. And Doc, one day his guys were struggling and he said, look, tomorrow morning, let's go. We got to be ready. Be down here at like 10 or something. And then he called an audible and rented out a movie theater, and they went and watched Rudy, right? Like, as a leader, right? He called this audible because he knew these guys just need to get connected. They need to relax. They don't need to beat their bodies up anymore.
Yeah, you set that tone, Molly. Every spring, I'll tell you a little secret. I tell everybody we're going to have a meeting the night before the first workout at 6:00. Okay, so say the first workout's the 1st of March, February 28th or 29th, whatever the leap year is, however that works. So, I said, hey, be at the locker room. And because I hated as a player coming in the day of the first workout that morning and having to sit in front of my locker for an hour where all these men and ladies and PR and all this stuff sat there and pontificated me forever.
Right.
And I wanted to get on the field and play baseball. So I would do it the night before, but I would have 2 buses pull up and put everybody on the bus, and we'd go to a movie theater.
That's awesome.
And I had a little movie that I put together. We took a couple of months and put special, the message that we wanted to deliver, and it was entertainment. But to look out there and see these guys eating popcorn and
chilling,
and some of them got to know about it, and they kept it a secret from the new guys. Hey, what are we doing? What's he going to talk about? I never had a meeting the night before. Yeah, we're going somewhere, but we rented a whole theater, and it was fun. You got to think about your presentation. You got all this time to make an impression. And I see guys all the time. I said, wait, John Hart long ago told me, he said, listen, I like to wear gym shorts and a T-shirt and this and that, whatever. He says, but I'm the general manager of the Texas Rangers. I have a certain presentation to make as a leader. What separates you? It isn't necessarily the way you look or you dress. It's just, your presentation. Molly, if you can't walk in a room and go, okay, this guy can carry a room. This guy can lead a room. This lady here is different. But it's not so much what you say and it's just your presentation. And it doesn't mean, you're louder and harder and tougher. There's what I'm talking about. There's a presence. You walk in and go, this person here is probably might be running this room.
Right. Speaking of leaders, right, you've been around guys like A-Rod and Jeter and Rivera and Randy Johnson. I mean, you've been around some of the best. What would you say are some of the things that you see separate them from a mindset perspective, from the way they approach the game?
All those people, as you were rattling off the names, I was saying, okay, what they haven't, they were consumed with excellence. Okay. And it's not always healthy, and it doesn't always I know people that are going to live till they're 100, but they're not going to have the fun that I had. Okay. And believe me, I was talking to somebody the other day. So we had a lot of fun. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. It was, I had a good belly laugh once a day. And some people may go, really, Buck? Yeah. But it was entertaining to me. All those guys loved what they were doing. They like being at the ballpark. They like being a teammate. So you got to like it. Life's too short. You got to like what you're doing. And I thank God every day that I was able to do something that I loved. I never had trouble getting out of bed and go in the park. And there were days, I used to say all days, let's go, boys, to the coaches. Let's go see what the boys have in store for us today. And even as we're walking down the dugout for a game and you walk through that dugout and the sun hits you in the face and the crowd's alive. And there's days you go to the park and you feel like, man, we got it going on. We've won 6 or 7 in a row. We got our best pitcher starting. They got their worst pitcher starting. And you go up the runway at the end of the day and you go, what happened? And then there's some days you go up there, you got your worst pitcher. They got their best. You haven't played well in forever. And you come out with a euphoria because things happen. So, you prepare for everything. And the twists and turns is what makes life. Can you imagine how boring it would be if you knew how everything was going to happen?
Right. Right. Not so fun. I heard there's a little story around Derek Jeter and number 2. You got a little something there?
Numbers are very precious everywhere, and it's carried with me through my career. But, giving out a single number for the Yankees was pretty special. And we didn't have many. We didn't have many left. And Gene Michael and I and, Nick Fiore, the clubhouse guy, Nick was ready to give him number 150 something. Who knows what it was. And we were sitting there, and this guy, Gene Michael, who was, one of the best GMs I ever had and was a great evaluator, infielders, great evaluator, period, really loved Jeter. He spent a lot of time watching him in AA and AAA. And obviously we did too. We drafted him, out of the state of Michigan high school. But long story short, we made the decision to give him a single number. And boy, we took some grief for it. Oh, how dare they do that? Well, Molly, it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it sure did, man. It sure did.
But one of the biggest things, other than Derek's skills, was, when I met his mom and dad, and when I met his sister, and the way he interacted with his sister, this guy weighed 165 pounds, 170 pounds at Yankee Stadium. He came up after being drafted, 17, 18 years old, and spending time with his mom and dad. I went, okay, this kid's got a chance. But you think about all the time he spent in New York. Not once did he embarrass that organization, that city, his mom and dad didn't. It was important for him to make good decisions. I tell players all the time, you got this devil and this angel on your shoulder, and they're having a fight behind your back. Who's going to win? I go, how's your no button work? And it comes in all walks of life. How's your no button work? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that devil's won, and you better learn from it and not make the same mistake.
In just a minute, we'll get back to the show. But first, I want to invite you to join my group coaching program, Game Changer Leadership Huddles. My coaching program is perfect if you love setting and achieving new goals, if you are committed to personal and professional growth, and if you want to be part of a community that will challenge and support you. Get signed up today at mollyfletcher.com/leadership-huddles and become a part of our growing community. Again, that's mollyfletcher.com/leadership-huddles. And for our podcast listeners, use the discount code GAMECHANGER to get special pricing. I can't wait to see you in the huddles. What do you think's the single most important leadership lesson that you've learned, Buck? I mean, you've led in a lot of different places. What's the single most important leadership lesson? Yeah, I know. That's a big one, right? In your career.
There's so many parts of that, Molly, and there's not a blueprint. I know that everybody has to give up just a little bit of their individuality for the good of the team. The game's not played with a teleprompter. Today you watch how they try to script games. It's not comical, but it's very exposing, so to speak, is when games get off script, a lot of guys can't handle it, coaches, managers, because they've got this, or more importantly, general managers, because they're the ones that send in the script down a lot of times. And when the teleprompter goes down, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, that guy was supposed to pitch 6 innings, he only pitched 3 innings. That guy was supposed to get a hit, he didn't. The numbers tell you one thing, but it's played by human beings. I think your ability to adjust to your players and their needs. And it's not always a physical thing on the field. Sometimes some of my best times with players was, hey, let's take a walk. And we'd walk out into center field on field 6 in spring training, and nobody's around, and sit underneath a tree and maybe talk about life. I don't know. But sometimes I think you've got to adjust to the situation. I think the respect for the players and, the skill that it takes to play at that level, they're special. Along with that special gift comes responsibility. You're different. What do you bring that separates you from somebody I can get on every street corner? What do you bring? And it may be just, I tell people we can't outspin the Yankees or the Red Sox at that time, but we can out relationship them. We can out evaluate them. We can out develop our own players. We can out relationship them within our clubhouse, where there's such a feeling throughout the organization, not just the big league club, the AAA club. This is who we are. I used to ask our ownership all the time, who are we? Who do we want to be? You tell me your vision for the club because you own it. Here's my vision. And if you like it, we might have a job to do.
What is one thing that you wish you knew earlier in your career, right, from a leadership perspective?
Oh, that's a good question. Hey, and listen, I stepped on my tail. I go, what? That wasn't a good idea. Ain't doing that again. I think I learned a lot from coaches and managers about situations, how not to treat them. But if I had something to do over again, what's tough for me, Molly, is I had to earn stuff every day because, I wasn't Don Mattingly. I wasn't Derek Jeter. So I wish I had let my guard down a little bit more maybe and let everybody see what a blast I was having.
Yeah.
I had a great time. But I was afraid by showing that that it was some weakness. Does that make any sense?
100%. Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah, getting a little vulnerable, you didn't want to do it.
Yeah, and as you get established and you don't have to worry about that as much anymore, it became a lot more fun. But I don't know if that'll ever change when you're 35, 36 managing the Yankees and you want everything to be perfect. But it's about relationships and they follow your grind. And sometimes you can grind too much. You really can.
For sure. Baseball is obviously it's a game of failure, right? I mean, it's a game of failure and
a lot more nowadays when they're striking out about 6 or 7 times.
Well, yeah, and Chipper came on actually, and we talked about that a little bit. What do you think the game has taught you about resilience?
You have so much failure during the season that you realize that, I tell people all the time during the season, listen, nobody's as good as a stretch will make you think, and nobody's as bad as a stretch will make you think. The great thing about baseball season is there are no Cinderellas. And it's kind of like life. There's no Cinderella. Sooner or later, your essence and who you are and what you bring will come out. It will. I know the good Lord wouldn't give me more than I could handle, but I wish he didn't have so much confidence in me. Anyway, there's some moments there where you're kind of going behind the scenes in that office. You go, man, come on. But baseball and life and sport, it'll let you off the deck. It will. If you'll just stay true to it, the core, and grind through it, you'll see that moment of light. It's hard sometimes to see it coming. Then all of a sudden you get that eureka moment. And when I walk out of my office, it was like, you can't tell whether we won or lost. They don't need that up and down. Oh, wonder if Buck's mad today. Wonder if he's happy. No, they need to know what they're getting every day from the leader. They need to know this guy, come hell or high water, is going to bring a certain thing every day. And he doesn't get too giddy when we're winning, and he doesn't get too down when we're losing. And that's the great thing about baseball. There's no Cinderellas. All your strengths and weaknesses will show up. I tell guys, your actions are going to speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. I don't want a bunch of lip and gum service. Show me. You're going to get a chance to show me. Everybody here is going to get an opportunity to show me that they can help us.
I love it. There's so many people right now that are looking for ways. I mean, recovering fast. I mean, some of the things I saw with the best athletes, they recover quickly, right? Whether it's golf or baseball, or they're going to go 0 for 4. They're going to go 0 for 4 maybe the next night, right? And they may again, but the best come out of that. What do they do? What have you done in those moments?
What hit me when I first got to the big leagues, Molly, and this is something people keep. I could not believe the lack of confidence of people at that level with that skill set. I was like, man, if I had your skill set, you'd have to put me in a cage every day. Okay. But I don't want to get into the whole fear of failure thing or whatever, but it's what drove them. Paul O'Neill, guys like that, they would get embarrassed when they didn't do things well, almost. People say, Paul didn't run that ball out. Well, Paul was embarrassed. He just wanted to get off the field. Okay. And you got to know the essence of what drove it. And I got off. What was your original question?
How these guys recover? Like, what are some of the things that even
Some don't.
Yeah.
Initially they grind. They go back to basics, so to speak. I don't want to make it too. I go one time to Mattingly. I go, Donnie, what are you doing in that cage this morning after a night game? Nobody's around. Why is that? He said, Buck, I have got to get that mental edge that when I look out to the mound in the ninth inning of a tough game, that I know I'm prepared for this moment and I've outworked him and he is not going to beat me because of my preparation. And that always struck a chord with me. You may win, lose, draw, hit a line drive right at somebody, whatever. Some umpire makes a bad call and you're out or whatever. But by God, I'm going to control the things I can and I'm going to grind through them. And from that standpoint, that is going to be relentless. There's certain absolutes that I'm not going to stray from, because it's the essence of who I am. In baseball, especially, Molly, they'll sniff a phony so fast it'll make your head spin. There's too many games. You're around each other too much. So you better be pretty sincere and be sure you're not projecting something that's not really who you are and what you want them to be about.
What's harder, right? Building a winning culture or keeping it that way?
Keeping it. You come in and, the new flavor of the month. And that's why my biggest tip of the hats are, and I really am drawn to coaches that win when they're expected to win. When that expectations of that, and you're taking everybody's best shot, you're not, I was on the air the other night about a team. They'd asked me, well, they're going to be the little engine that could. They're going to have a great mental edge this year, and they're talented, and they're bulletproof. They're young. They don't know any better, and they don't have the expectations of greatness that people think follows, say, the Yankees around. And their failure is looked at differently. So I tell you, once you get there, staying away from that fat cat feeling, and it all revolves around the people you surround yourself with. And we live in a what have you done for me lately world. We understand that. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. You better be comfortable what you're getting into. But getting there, I'm not saying it's easy, but getting there to the point where you can compete every year, but maintaining that is a challenge. It can be done, but you got to be aware that there's a lot of lures around the corner that will take you away from the essence of what got you there. And you've got to have your eye out for that. And sometimes you've got to make personnel changes. But I wanted people to say, hey, this guy is an Oriole player. This is the type of guy that could play in Baltimore for Buck and his staff and for that organization. He's a J.J. Hardy. He's a Nate McLeod. He's an Adam Jones. He's a Nick Markakis. He's a Manny Machado. He's a Matt Wieters. Guys. Well, he may not would prosper over there, but there in Baltimore, they're going to get what he brings. And they're not always sexy headliners, okay? They just fit who you are and who you want to be. And I really had a lot of fun surrounding myself with those people.
Yeah. You put in the work. You put in the time. I mean, you're a no excuse guy, right?
Sometimes I go, okay, that makes sense. The way we did, if we're doing team defense, Molly, we would meet in the morning with that team. Say it was individual, maybe it was infield play. We'd have all the infielders and catchers, and we would meet in this room for 10 minutes. They got attention span of 10 to 12 minutes, 30-year-old men.
Sure.
Really? No, it's an entertainment thing.
I know, man. I know.
It's got to be entertaining. I mean, whether it's, and I understand that. So spring training, all my drills don't last more than 8 to 10 minutes. We don't blow horn. We have stopwatches. We're grown men. Just look at the watch, okay? And we synchronize our watches every morning so everybody's on the same time. Anyway, it's not, brain surgery, but, we go out there. So we cover it inside and we have a tape that shows it with our guys executing it. Every time there's something happens in a game that we want to stress, I'll turn to somebody in the dugout and go, put it on the tape. We had 6 or 7 different columns. So we'd show it. Then we'd go out on the field and execute it. And there wasn't a lot of talk. If I look over a drill and some coach is pontificating for 5 minutes, everybody's standing around listening to him, we're going to have a problem because that's about action. We've already done all that inside. Out on the field is action. But my point is that, you rehearse these things, but I love it when a player goes, Buck, I got a question. What if we did it this way? Every year we change something, Molly. Hey, in Toronto, we ran a cutoff and relay with a man on second this way. You know what? I like that better. Does everybody like that better? Okay, take that out of the folder, put that in. I like that better. We tweak it every year. But I love when J.J. Hardy go, Buck, I got a question. I understand what we're trying to do, but if we did this and did that, once you get to the point where your players are comfortable and take ownership and are having these type of conversations about, rehearsing properly, so to speak, and you're on your way. You walk out of that and you go, yep, we got it going on now. And it's fun to watch, man.
Buck, how did you instill accountability, right, among the teammates, among the guys in the clubhouse?
They do each other.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. I'm like I said, a ship passing the night to some extent. It's about, pleasing their teammates. There's a certain standard. When you got somebody, Adam Jones one time said, hey, listen, I appreciate what you did. They're talking to another teammate, but here we don't do that. We just don't do that. That's not really, it doesn't fit into what way we have to do it. Okay. And this is why. And I never, Molly, go, hey, here's what we're doing and find something to like about it. You're doing this. I tell them why. What do you think? And here's why we're doing it. I love for you to question something because I've got pretty good reasons for it, but I want to hear your thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
awesome.
usually it's, oh, okay, I got it. Now I get it. I understand that. I said, you got a better way? Really? Let's do it. Because we'll have a time tomorrow morning before we're going to the field where we're going over this on the chalkboard, and you can tell me it may be a better way. You don't think Tom Brady at some point has gone to his coaches and said, I appreciate everything. I have respect for it. What about this? Because they're in the arena. They're on the field. The game's played at a different speed than you play in your backyard, in practice. There's a practice speed and there's a game speed.
Yeah, for sure. You got to listen. Buck, I could have this conversation forever, but I got to honor your time. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire, and you just hit me with whatever comes back. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'm not good at short answers.
That's okay. Don't. Yeah, that's okay. What's one word to describe you?
I don't know. My wife says I'm relentless.
What's your favorite hobby?
Probably golf.
A player you would have loved to manage?
Wow, God, there's so many. I was a big Lou Gehrig guy. I just loved everything the way he's described. Probably Gehrig.
Who's a leader, Buck, you admire?
I really admire people that win when they're expected to win. Guys that get there and then maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Saban. I love the way, he never lets guys get comfortable, but he's not, he's dropping his guard more as he gets older. Belichick was one of those guys. I got to know themselves. I love John Harbaugh there in Baltimore, the way he does business. Ozzie Newsome, the GM there for years. What a solid tandem they were. You go to anything and you show me somebody that's won year after year after year. Oh, they out recruit. Oh, they sign. They have more payroll. Trust me, there's teams that have had top 10 recruiting years every year, but they don't compete with Alabama. Why? I know you're probably a Big Ten fan. I'm a big SEC fan, so we won't discuss that anymore.
Hey, Saban left my school.
Oh, I know.
But, you remind me of Izzo, right, as far as relationships, time, grinder, kind of stayed grounded, right? I mean...
everybody's chasing another, this grass is greener over there. Every job has its challenges. I had a GM call me a couple of days ago complaining about his owner or something. We were talking and I said, listen, I've had 4 owners. None of them were perfect. I'm not. I'm sure there's some things that I'm wrong or they don't like about me. I said, that's part of it. First of all, he owns a club.
Right.
Okay. So it was part of the gig, but every job has its challenges. And there's not some utopia. That's why the job's available.
Well, you referenced Saban, right? Saban he talks about, right? He's a process guy, right? At some level, that's sort of a way of saying he's a grinder, right? And
he's a rehearser. He's rehearsing.
Totally.
It's funny. I had a friend of mine who's the director of baseball at IMG Academy. A couple of days ago, I went to see his son play, and he goes, says, yeah, Saban just did an hour Zoom call with all our coaches and kids and what. I said, what? And think about the energy level. This guy just won another national championship. Yeah. He said, Buck, not once on the air it seemed like, oh, God, I got to do this again. Here we go. Some friend, I'm doing this so I can recruit their players. He goes, never. He said he enjoyed it. The opportunity to impact some people's lives, a chance to say, listen, don't do this. You're going to step on your tail if you do this. He said it was sincere. He said, you understand why great things follow him around.
Well, a lot of these guys, right? Complacency, or gals at this level, complacency is the enemy of success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And believe me, it'll creep in. You see it,
all the time.
Wait a minute. I've got to do this again. Yeah. There's a certain, the fruit is so sweet if you can get there. I mean, that moment when you're walking up the runway after winning that playoff game, I'll never forget Texas. We had a wild card. hadn't been in the playoffs 15, 20 years, whatever, in Baltimore. And we got there. I got there in the spring of 2011, and we were in the playoffs in 12, and we beat Texas in a wild card game in Arlington. And coming up that runway from the dugout to the locker room, I just wish everybody could have that moment when the fruition of all that work and the players are starting to get it and it's showing up on the field, and there's a feeling of, and that's in all businesses. I mean, you can all have those moments and you don't have to broadcast it. You just know. You know what I miss? I miss that look where you look down the dugout and a guy catches your eye and something's happened on the field that we talked about and just came to fruition after 2 months, and you lock eyes for a little while, and you know that he knows and he knows that you know, and just a nod of the head. I had a guy in high school. You know, he used to sign annuals.
Sure.
And people just didn't pay any attention to this guy. For some reason, I was just always nice to him because it was the right thing to do. I'll never forget. His name was Anderson Collier, and he came up to me and said, "Would you sign my annual?" And I went, "Sure, man." So I signed it. I noticed there was hardly any of them there. Anybody had written it. So he signed mine, and I don't know, a week or two later, I was just kind of glancing through it, and he said, "Sometimes life's greatest emotions show themselves in silence." And I never forgot that. And just because somebody's not popping their gums and saying doesn't mean, and it's helped me with players so much over the years, and to understand that sometimes there's a lot boiling underneath that you're not seeing.
For sure. So, Buck, the show's called Game Changers. One last question. What game changer inspires you and why?
My kids and now some grandsons. I just, it inspires me to hold myself to that standard. Never drop that standard. What drives you? What keeps you becoming a hermit out in the backyard? I mean, the impact you can still make in people's lives and keep them from making mistakes that you made. It's fun because when it's all said and done, that's what's going to be said about you. What kind of mark did you leave here? Did you impact people's lives? And were you just talking about it, or were you doing it?
For sure. Hey, Buck, this was fun. Thanks for taking time.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Let me know if we'll bump heads somewhere along the way.
What an awesome leader. Here are 3 of my favorite takeaways from my conversation with Buck. Number 1, make it cool to care. Make it cool to care. You can tell that Buck is a big relationship guy. He made an effort to always notice the little things and point them out in a way that builds connection. As a leader, you set the tone. In other words, make it cool to care. I love this one. Number 2, approach difficult conversations with empathy. Each year in spring training, Buck, he'd have to deliver some tough news. He made it a point to never say something in a meeting room about a guy that they wouldn't say directly to the player himself. And then Buck always wanted to make sure the players knew that if they had any other questions that came up for him later, hey, call me. I'm here for you. That's cool. That's not always the case. We can all take a page out of Buck's playbook to show up to tough conversations with empathy. And number 3, align your actions with your words. Buck walked away from the Yankees managerial job. Why? Because he wasn't willing to sacrifice his coaches for his job. He knew that he couldn't preach one thing in the clubhouse while doing the opposite and still command respect as a baseball manager in the future. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.